Ancient spirits from beyond the grave, lend me your wisdom. Speak to me through this Ouija board. It's moving! Go. Play. Magic the Gathering. What could it mean?
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. Don't you just love when you spend a few days in a row snagging footage for a deck that, hypothetically uses Summon Sorceress, then, hypothetically, Konami releases a list hours later that upends all your work? Hypothetically? Anyway, let's take a look at today's deck, Cursed Necrofear Infernoid. So here's the list, and God have I missed Infernoid ratios. Look at all of those 2-ofs. It's like pure, distilled Zodiac Duelist. Mwah. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, Curse Necrofear is a several card deep series of nostalgia support for everyone's favorite cutie and extra-temporal source of ultimate evil, Bakura. Bakura was a character that inspired very real fear in an anime with otherwise very ham-fisted stakes, so it was frustrating that his support for so long was so awful. These cards are an olive branch to the occult. Their game plan revolves around their Dark Necrofear Retrain, who can be special summoned by shuffling 3 banished fiends back into the deck, and her associated spooky ghosts, who preserve your life points while recurring her from the graveyard. They've also received some questionably playable cards that raise your ceiling provided you're playing Destiny board of all things. Hilariously, when performing optimally, this alternate win con does double duty as an advantage engine that sometimes accidentally wins you the game if your opponent takes just a little too long to dispatch you. Like most nostalgia support, however, there's an issue. This deck is like living on an extremely steep hill, perfect for snowballing, but it hasn't snowed since GOAT format. The archetype has no way to get the ball rolling in the first place. We certainly could have supplemented the new Destiny board support with Mining Cave and foregone Necrofear entirely, but that sounds like the most boring possible thing we could have done with our time. We could also have circumvented Cursed Necrofear's abysmal hand summoning condition with Summon Sorceress, but extenuating circumstances seem to have intervened. Instead, we're going to summon Necrofear as Konami intended by shuffling banished fiends back into the deck. And what fiends love to be banished more than Infernoid? Infernoid, the red-headed step demons of Due format, are an intensely explosive deck with access to on-theme dark holes and heavy storms for days. However, the steep cost associated with summoning their busty behemoths makes them easy prey for any deck with even remote grinding potential. By supplementing this strategy with Bakura's Babes, we should be able to add some much-needed late game to this all-or-nothing archetype. And if we pick up a game with Destiny board in the process, I'll consider it a success. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Firstly, we've got our Occultion Oddballs. 3 Curse Necrofear. If she's destroyed in your control by an opponent's card, she returns at the end phase and pops cards equal to your unique face-up spells and traps. After that is 3 Dark Spirit of the Denial, which specials a level 8 fiend from graveyard if your opponent's monster attacks and returns to hand when that monster goes to the graveyard. Next is 3 Dark Spirit of the Malice, which specials the fiend if your opponent activates a card or effect and returns if said fiend goes to the graveyard. After that are our Noids, 3 Decatron, 2 each of Anonku, Deviati, Seismitas, and Hamadik, and 1 each of Atondel, Sajet, Antra, and Piatti. Finally, we've got 3 Ash Blossom. For spells, we're on 3 Extravagance, 3 Dark Occultism, which is both a Destiny board or level 8 Fiend Searcher, as well as a Spirit Message Magical Mallet, 1 each of the Spirit Messages, 3 Called, 3 Future Fusion, 1 1-for-1, 1 Reasoning, 3 Void Vanishment, 3 Void Imagination, 3 Void Feast, yes I know this is bad, 3 Destiny board, and 3 Death Sentence, which recycles banished fiends as the board ticks up and ends the game 1 turn early. The extra is an Extravagance board of Tierra, Ntis, Hiata, Beat Cop, and Link Haribo. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Cyberse, a deck that edges ever closer to playability daily. They're going first, which is optimal for us. This hand has almost none of the new stuff in it, but really showcases both the power of Infernoid and the flexibility of cards like Dark Occultism. Our opponent's going to start by, well, normal summoning a copy of Cyberse Gadget, special summoning a Boot Staggered, and going into a Pentastag. They get a token and go into a Link Spider before a Link summoning a Transcode Talker. That brings back Pentastag. They'll special summon a copy of Backup Secretary and go to Xcode before special summoning a Denigrade Buster and passing it back. We draw a D for turn. We'll start with a Dark Occultism, getting rid of a copy of the Nonku. Afterwards, we'll activate a copy of Vanishment for a copy of Void Imagination. We'll get ourselves a Tiara and try and trigger about 18 effects at once. Our opponent's going to Denigrade Buster, but that's no big deal. We'll use Intis on the same target 3 times because it's the only thing we can destroy. Afterwards, we're going to special summon a copy of the Nonku. It destroys the Xcode Talker, which should be enough. We'll pass it back to our opponent and get this Tiara back at end step. They're going to set a card and pass it back to us. We'll activate Destiny Board for a little bit of added inevitability. We're going to go to battle phase and attack directly for 3,000. They'll activate Recoded Alive, but we can call by the grave the card that they target. We'll get in for 3,000 and 3,400 before activating Void Vanishment again to clear it from our side of the board with Void Feast. Our opponent draws for turn and passes back. We'll activate Destiny Board at end step, and this is the end of the game. We'll go to battle phase and deal lethal damage. So that was a reasonably interesting game, but really only showcases the raw power of Infernoid. Don't worry, Destiny Board plays a role in this one. Our second match, we have lost the die roll and are being forced to go first, and there's only one deck even scraping the bounds of the metagame that would be that cocksure. That's right, it's Spell Mining Cave. We get to go first, so we'll activate a copy of Pot of Extravagance. We find off the top, well, a bunch of cards that are really good going second. We'll pass it back to our opponent, who will activate an Extravagance of their own. They find a copy of Spell Mining Cave. They will activate it and normal summon a Lilith so that it is not destroyed in the end step before passing it back to us. We find a Death Sentence. We'll activate another Indulgence. Our opponent's going to chain a copy of Ojama Trio. That's extremely bad news for me because it means they can activate the effect of Lilith safely without Spell Mining being reduced to nothing. We'll go into a Beat Cop. They will flip Secret Barrel and Secret Blast, Tapium taking slightly less from that for Link summoning. We'll go into Seismitas and Tahita, activate Dark Occultism for a D, and pass it back. We're trying to get as many cards out of our hand as possible so we don't take damage from the blast. They're going to activate another copy of Extravagance, set 4, and pass. We'll activate Destiny Board, and the race is on. We have to survive exactly 2 turns before Death Sentence wins the game. We'll start adding cards back to hand with Death Sentence, and when we do so, our opponent will build a chain of 4, taking us to a healthy 1,800 points of life. Thankfully, their hand is absolute garbage. We'll pass it back to them now. They find a Time Lord off the top, which halves our life point total, but thankfully 900 is more than 0. We draw for turn and pass it back once again. Our opponent draws off the top Ojama Trio, which means they won't be able to do anything. Our Destiny Board is going to activate an end step, and our Death Sentence will spell their death. Dnina. So now you've seen what happens when Infernoids pop off, and when you get to sit on Destiny Board for 4 turns. But what happens when both halves of the deck are in harmony? Our third match is a best of 3 versus meta against Salamangreat. We are going second, and our opponent's hand is pretty good, which means they'll be able to pop off pretty far. They'll start by normal summoning a copy of Jack Jaguar, then using the effect of Gazelle in hand after the Phalanx is summoned. That gets him a Sanctuary to hand and a copy of Roar in the graveyard. Afterwards, they'll use Spinny's effect to get it on their side of the field, going into a Mirage Stalio for a Falco. That's going to turn into a Sunlight Wolf, and after that, Roar is going to be reset. Jack Jaguar will be resummoned by returning this copy of Falco. They'll activate Sanctuary into a second copy of Sunlight Wolf, set 2 cards, and pass it back. Well, we're going to start with a copy of Reasoning, which prompts the Roar from our opponent. Afterwards, we're going to activate Dark Occultism and then Void Imagination. Void Imagination is going to send a bunch of cards to the graveyard. We're going to trigger several Intisses. Our opponent is going to chain a copy of Called by the Grave. We're trying to pop our own Tiara as well because, of course, we want to be able to banish a bunch of cards, so this Necrofear in our hand is live. Because nothing gets popped, our opponent is able to resolve the effect of Gazelle and reset this copy of Roar. We're going to normal summon an Ash Blossom to go into Hida, so we can then special summon a copy of Deviati. That prompts the effect of Balinks at Graveyard from our opponent, and now we are free to start chewing through the board. We'll get in for 950 and nothing when attacking into the Gazelle, but our opponent is left with a single solitary copy of Jack Jaguar. They're going to activate Falco first, then Spinny's effect. After that, they're going to activate Foxy and go into Phalanx. They'll activate the effect of Jack Jaguar to bring itself back before going into an Update Jammer, and oh god, they're almost out of stuff. If only we can stop the Borreload. They'll attack our copy of Necrofear and then walk over our copy of Hito, which floats into a copy of Petrela. They'll activate DD Crow and main phase 2 to banish our copy of Anonku. Thankfully, we do draw a copy of Necrofear, which means we'll be able to special summon this copy of Deviati, proc the effect of Balinks, and then bring Necrofear back, but we have no way to get rid of this copy of Borreload. Okay, we'll just have to wait it out for at least one more turn. At least our copy of Necrofear recurs itself. Our opponent draws a copy of Called by the Grave, which is problematic. They're going to walk into our copy of Deviati. For turn, we draw... Well, a Homedic doesn't really do it. We're going to use Petrela on the set card. Our opponent's going to chain their copy of Called by the Grave, and now we're out of Deviati as well. For turn, they're going to draw a copy of Foul. They'll normal summon it and go to battle phase, reducing the attack on our copy of Piatti. We'll activate it in order to banish this copy of Jack Jaguar. They are going to take our copy of Dark Necrofear, which is frustrating because it means the effect of Dark Necrofear is not going to be able to be activated. After that, they're going to link summon 2 copies of Sunlight Wolf and set a copy of Roar. We'll go into Seismitas and attack over this copy of Sunlight Wolf because they no longer have a monster with which to activate the effect of Roar. We can then banish their copy of Borreload, and then they rip a copy of Pot of Desire off the top. Man, we were so close to equalizing this game, and it's just not going to work. With the Will of the Salamangreat that they draw, they should be able to pop off unless we can OTK them in one turn. It doesn't seem likely, and lo and behold, we draw dead. They're going to activate Will of the Salamangreat, go Wolf into Wolf, and attack directly for 1800. We have exactly one turn to find our way out of this. For turn, we draw a Dark Necrofear. That's pretty good. We're going to activate the effect, and our opponent has the Roar ready. Upsetting. Well, that felt bad, but it was really close. Potentially things will go better in Game 2. Our opponent is going first once again, and their hand is much better this time. So they're going to start with a copy of Salamangreat Circle, getting a copy of Gazelle to hand. Afterwards, they're going to normal summon a copy of Spinny and go to Valinx. That triggers the Gazelle in their hand. That Gazelle's going to send, what do you know, a Roar, before they activate the effect of Spinny to go into Mirage Stalio and fetch a copy of Jack Jaguar from deck. They're going to then go into a Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf before special summoning this copy of Jack Jaguar at Link Point, going into a second Sunlight Wolf to reset this copy of Salamangreat Roar and add this copy of Salamangreat Circle back to hand. We're going to lead with the Decatron, which prompts the Roar from our opponent as expected. Afterwards, we can activate Dark Occultism, which gets ashed. Well, we're all in on Atondel, but for what it's worth, Atondel is a pretty good card. We're able to make quick work of our opponent's board, but we know they have the Gazelle in the hand, and we know they have this Circle set. They're going to activate Circle. That's frustrating. They get a Foul to hand, then they activate Will to special summon a copy of Salamangreat Wolf from Graveyard before going into Heat Leo. They'll trigger the effect of Gazelle and shuffle this set card back. Of course, we cannot activate it, both because it can't be chained because of Heat Leo's effect, and because, well, we don't have another Void spell. They're going to go Update Jammer into a copy of Borreload Dragon, and the writing's kind of on the wall with this one. They'll reset this copy of Salamangreat Rage before destroying our monster by virtue of changing its attack to 0 and forcing the tag out. They get to attack twice with Borreload, so that's it. So we're back, and that went just about as well as we could have hoped for. Let's do the pros and the cons. First, the pros. 1, it does what it says on the tin. Certainly, I hope that third game showed that it gives a little bit of late-game flexibility to Infernoid and facilitates a game plan that makes playing Curse possible in the first place. 2, it's a blind second deck that recurs a ridiculous amount of advantage tremendously quickly. If you're playing Rogue, going super over the top super quickly is your best case against meta. And 3, winning with Destiny board, it's probably the best feeling in the known universe. And the cons. Firstly, it still retains most of the weaknesses of Infernoid. It's susceptible to Grave Hate, Play Stoppers, Ash, and, as you saw in the last game, DD Crow. 2, there are answers to Curse. The deck would be a lot better if Curse was recurring every turn, but unfortunately she's often blindsided by a Borreload, which prevents the trigger from resolving. And 3, it's a deck with 2 completely separate game plans, Noid Beats and Destiny board, and no amount of incidental synergy will be able to rescue a strategy at war with itself. All in all, it's cute, and I don't know if there's another home for Curse of Necrofear, but it's not great. Like most nostalgia support, this is an extremely overtuned card kept out of playability by a couple of unintuitive or unfortunate weaknesses, and the deck reflects it. So that's that. I was definitely upset for the video's sake that Summon Sorceress was banned, but in general I'm very happy to see her go. Thanks, Konami. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/mbtygo every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and if you have an idea for a certain deck or archetype you want me to take a look at on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comment section below and I'll do my best. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.